In 1899, in New York City, Dr. Alexander teaches mechanics and engineering at Columbia University. He is obsessed with science and innovation, but his lecture about Einstein, solar energy, and city planning is not taken seriously. This obsession distracts him greatly from his other responsibilities, and he often forgets things, such as the fact that tonight he is supposed to meet his girlfriend in the park. After his friend reminds him of the date, Alexander rushes to the park and remembers that he was also supposed to buy flowers, but he is immediately distracted by another innovation, a horseless carriage. When the driver accidentally turns it on, Alexander grabs the brake and stops it just in time. He then runs to meet his girlfriend Emma and takes her for a walk through the park, apologizing for the lack of flowers but offering something much better in their place, a marriage proposal. Emma says yes, and Alexander places a beautiful ring with her birthstone on her finger. Suddenly, the sweet moment is interrupted by an armed thief who takes Alexander's wallet and also tries to steal the ring. Alexander tries to stop him, and during the struggle, the gun accidentally wounds Emma. As the thief escapes, Alexander holds Emma close as she dies in his arms. Over the next 4 years, Alexander is depressed and does nothing but work all day, convinced that he can bring Emma back. His friends worry about him, but he ignores their concerns. One day, Alexander finally cleans himself up and reveals that he has finished his latest invention, a time machine. He sits inside it and activates it immediately, traveling back to the night of Emma's death. After a bright light surrounds him, he reappears in the park and sees Emma. He has missed her so much that he kisses her, even though they are in public, then pulls her out of the park to avoid the thief. They take a carriage downtown, and Emma reminds him that he promised flowers, so Alexander enters a shop to buy them. At that moment, the horseless carriage causes an accident in the street, and Alexander is forced to watch Emma die once again. Later in the morgue, Alexander realizes that if he keeps going back, he will only see Emma die over and over again, so instead he should travel to the future to see if advanced science can change the past. Once he returns to the time machine, Alexander sets it in motion and chooses to go to the future. When the machine glows again, he watches as everything around him changes, from the plants in his building to the clothes in the shops. Suddenly, he accidentally drops the necklace with Emma's picture and fails to retrieve it, so the necklace also disappears through time. Eventually, he arrives in the year 2030, and Alexander is amazed by the modern apartment buildings and screens everywhere. After a random person calls his suit retro, he goes to the New York Public Library, where he discovers that books are relics that must not be touched. There is also a set of screens and a giant spherical battery that powers them to project Vox, a holographic librarian. Vox has access to all databases on Earth, so Alexander asks him why he cannot change the past, but Vox simply says that time travel is not possible and begins listing works of science fiction to the point where he sings the soundtracks of famous movies. A frustrated Alexander returns to his time machine to go further into the future, but suddenly feels a tremor and stops in the year 2037. He is shocked to see that the entire city has been destroyed and is soon found by soldiers who want to help him evacuate because the moon is breaking apart. Alexander looks up to confirm this disturbing claim, but at that moment something explodes and the ground begins to crack, giving him the chance to return to the machine. Unfortunately, an earthquake strikes the machine and he falls unconscious, causing the time travel to continue for thousands of years. The Earth changes around Alexander, passing through dozens of different climates and environments, including a new ice age. Eventually, Alexander wakes up and stops the machine to discover that he has arrived in the year 802,701 before passing out again. Sometime later, Alexander is dreaming of Emma while a mysterious person tends to his wounds. When he finally wakes up, he sees a boy named Kalen looking at him, but Alexander cannot understand the language he speaks. Kalen runs away and Alexander follows him, only to discover that he is in a village built over a canyon. Then Kalen shouts some words, and all the villagers come to see what is happening, but the only one who can speak English is Mara, the woman who has been caring for him and Kalen's sister. The villagers wonder if they should throw Alexander into the river, so he tries to explain that he comes from the past, but Mara translates this as Alexander being a wandering idiot who hit his head. Suddenly, they hear a horn announcing that it is time to sleep, so Alexander goes with Mara and Kaelin to spend the night with them. He also shares some stories with Kaelin about the great city and gives him his pocket watch. After Kaelin falls asleep, Mara explains that their parents are dead. Then Alexander looks outside and sees the broken moon, thinking that he has gone too far. Later that night, Alexander dreams of a white face calling his name, followed by the head of a giant monster roaring. He wakes up quite frightened and discovers that Kaelin is also having a nightmare while repeating the word Morlock. Mara quickly calms him down and realizes that the pocket watch is missing. When Alexander asks about the nightmare, Mara says that everyone sees the same dream, but refuses to explain what Morlock means. The next day, Mara shows Alexander the collection of construction pieces they have gathered from the ground. Thanks to these pieces, they have been able to maintain English, and Mara has been doing her best to preserve ancient culture by teaching others. On the way back, Alexander wonders why he has not seen any elderly people, so Mara says that they are all dead without explaining why. The rest of the villagers are working in the fields with the help of windmills, but Mara drags Alexander to show him where his time machine is. As Alexander prepares the machine, Mara asks him to take Kaelin with him. Before she can explain why, she hears a noise and runs off to look for her brother. Alexander follows her and discovers that the Morlocks are monstrous beings that hunt the villagers. That is why there are no elderly people. They are not fast enough to escape. The villagers panic and run as fast as they can while the Morlocks use darts to knock them down. While Mara searches for Kaelin, she is also struck by a dart, and Alexander rushes to remove it, realizing that it contains a very foul-smelling substance. The villagers try to reach the river to escape in their boats, but the path is blocked when larger Morlocks begin emerging from the ground. As the people try to find a safe direction to run, these new Morlocks grab the villagers who were struck by the darts and bind them before sinking back into the ground. Suddenly, Kaelin cries out for help because he has also been struck and a Morlock is coming for him. Mara wants to save him, but Alexander tells her to stay back and goes in her place. He pushes the Morlock away just in time, and as Kaelin runs, Alexander strikes the creature with a tool and then begins running in the opposite direction. The Morlock chases Alexander, and when it jumps, Alexander dodges it, causing the monster to roll into the jungle. Then Alexander climbs one of the windmills, and when the Morlock returns and grabs his legs, Alexander kicks it until it falls. However, the Morlock does not give up and quickly climbs the windmill until it reaches Alexander at the top, causing them to fight each other until they fall together to the ground. The Morlock grabs Alexander by the neck, ready to kill him, but Kaelin appears and stops it with a torch. At that moment, they hear Mara screaming, so the Morlock sinks back into the ground while Alexander and Kaelin return only to discover that Mara is being taken away. Alexander hurriedly digs into the sand to find the hole without success. Angry and frustrated, he asks the villagers why they do not fight, and one of them explains that this is how their world works. Those who fight are simply taken first. Then Alexander asks Kaelin where they take the people, but the boy replies that they are not supposed to talk about the place where the ghosts are. Later that night, Kaelin sneaks out of the village to take Alexander to that place, which turns out to be an ancient underground cave. Alexander is astonished to discover that these are the ruins of the New York Library, and while the books crumble into ashes, the battery remains intact. This allows Vox to appear again, and he even remembers Alexander. He explains that humans have evolved into two different species, the villagers who live above ground and the Morlocks who live beneath the earth. Vox met a villager who managed to escape. Apparently, this man came from the eastern jungle, and Alexander only has to follow the breathing to find him. Kaelin and Alexander set off immediately and follow the sound of the breathing through the jungle until they find the giant head from their dreams, which is supposed to keep people away. Alexander tells Kaelin to return to the village and light a fire so he can find his way back after rescuing Mara. Before leaving, Kaelin tells him that the watch is missing. Then Alexander enters the mouth of the statue only to slip and suddenly fall, saving himself at the last second. He clings tightly as a swarm of bats flies very close to him, then slowly lowers himself until he finds machinery that indicates he is on the right path. Suddenly, Alexander sees some Morlocks pass by, so he hides behind a wall and moves carefully until he finds the entire group working together. Alexander goes down an empty corridor and finds a pile of villagers' clothing that includes Mara's necklace, but he also sees a collection of disturbing tools. As he steps back in shock, he accidentally falls into a pit full of skeletons that confirm his suspicions. The Morlocks hunt the villagers for food. At that moment, a Morlock finds him and immediately locks him in. In this new room, Alexander finds Mara in a cage, but she does not seem to respond. When Alexander turns around, he sees a strange pale man known as the Uber Morlock, the leader of their race and the pale face from the dreams. He explains that after the moon fell, the earth could no longer support humans. Some people managed to survive above ground, but the rest escaped underground. They spent so many centuries down there that when they tried to return, the sun hurt them, so they eventually bred into different castes. Some of them have good eyes and ears, and others have great muscles. The Uber Morlock belongs to the caste that expanded brain abilities, which is why he can see and control the thoughts of others. He controls the other Morlocks so they do not overconsume and exhaust the food supply, and he controls the villagers to use them as food. He also sometimes controls his women to use them as breeding vessels, which is his plan for Mara. A furious Alexander says that this is a corruption of every natural law, but the Uber Morlock points out that natural evolution did this, and that the unnatural thing is actually time travel. He then grabs Alexander by the neck and looks into his mind before releasing him into a mental image of what he could have had. Alexander finds himself in his original home, surrounded by successful inventions, and his wife Emma with a pair of children. However, the illusion quickly fades, and the Uber Morlock explains why the past cannot be changed. Alexander built the time machine because Emma died, so if she lives, then the machine is never built, and Alexander cannot use it to go back and save her in the first place. At that moment, the Uber Morlock makes the machine appear and tells Alexander to leave, since he has his answer. Alexander sits in the machine, but before leaving, he asks the Uber Morlock for the missing watch. When the man approaches to give it to him, Alexander grabs him, activates the machine, and begins to fight him. Alexander's blows are not strong enough to hurt a creature as powerful as the Uber Morlock, but he at least manages to disarm him when the Uber Morlock reveals a knife. Then Alexander is grabbed by the neck again, so he strikes the machine to make it lose steam, which blasts the Uber Morlock in the face and knocks him down. At the last second, the Uber Morlock grabs Alexander's neck, but Alexander sends the machine faster into the future, and the hanging monster ages rapidly until it turns into nothing but ashes. When Alexander finally stops the machine, he is billions of years in the future and discovers that the Morlocks have wiped out all life on Earth. However, he does not give up. He returns and rescues Mara from the cage, then connects the time machine to the watch and activates it, blinding the Morlocks who come after them. Alexander and Mara close the door behind them and flee until they reach the main chamber, where Alexander is struck by a dart. Mara knocks down the attacking Morlock, but the noise alerts the others, who begin chasing them by following the smell of the dart. The pair run quickly down the corridor, and Alexander throws his jacket to distract the Morlocks with the scent as they begin climbing out of the cave. At that moment, the pocket watch causes the machine to malfunction and suddenly explode, killing all the Morlocks in the cave. The pair are saved just in time by the villagers brought by Kalen, and together they move away just before the giant head also explodes, sending a destructive wave through all the tunnels. Alexander is not sad about losing the machine because he has found a new home here, and he joins Mara. Sometime later, Alexander brings Vox out of the cave so he can educate the village's children, then takes Mara and Kalen to see the place where his house used to be. At the same time in the present, Alexander's friends are somewhat worried because he has been missing for a week, but they are also happy if it means that he has finally found happiness.